The markets now see an 80% chance of Bank of Canada will hike 75 basis points in July. The second one says Toronto housing crash up to 36% in some GTA suburbs since February. And the third one says home prices expected to plummet across Ontario, but Toronto should remain hot. I read those three things. I'm like, well, what is it? Is Toronto remaining hot or...
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
4, 3, 2. Welcome back to the show, the Tom Storey Show, episode number 3 with Tom and Steve. And guess what? We convinced someone to come on and be a guest this week. We didn't think it would happen, but we finally got a yes. And actually was the first person we reached out to, so I'm thrilled about that. So thank you.
I'm being paid to be here, guys. No,
yeah, under the table. You'll get your $5 later.
Perfect.
I'm really excited. So Emma Pace is an agent in my market in Toronto, or I guess our market. It's not my market. It's our market in Toronto. And someone who I really, really respect in the industry. I think the way that she looks at the numbers and just has an overall perspective on the industry, we line up very similar. Like we think about things the same way. And I'm thrilled to have you here because there's a lot happening in the market. There's a lot of things changing right now, like just going on Canada-wide, North American-wide real estate. So bit of a background of Emma. So you're a team leader at one of the most productive teams at Zoocasa,
Yep.
which is a real estate brokerage. Is it Canada-wide or just Toronto-wide?
No, we do have agents. We do have agents out in Calgary and Vancouver. But the bulk of our, trades happen in the GTA.
Awesome. And just for some intro for people that don't know who you are, or haven't consumed your content before, who is Emma? What's going on here? Who are you? How long in the industry? What's your team looking like? And what's going on?
Totally. So I've been in the industry for 7 years now. So pretty similar to you. I feel like we've had a very similar trajectory on the way up. So started as a solo agent back in the day. I actually transitioned, you can say it took one step back, I guess. And I ended up becoming a showing specialist for a top agent at Zoocasa, which is how I ended up at the brokerage. Just because I really wanted to skyrocket my growth, right?
Yep.
And you can do everything on your own for sure, and it's the same thing as everything on the internet. You can learn whatever you want on YouTube. You want to build your own computer, you want to build your own house, go ahead and do it. For me, I just said I'm totally down to take a little bit of a financial haircut my first year so that I can skyrocket in year 2, 3, 4, 5 going forward. And then, so I end up becoming the top producer at Zoocasa for several years in a row. And then I realized, this whole concept that everybody says when you read, like, you need leverage, you need time. And I was like, what the hell is leverage? What does that mean? I have no idea what that means, but it sounds cool. And then I kind of figured that out along the way. And I realized that means being able to buy your time back to do more productive items that will get you further ahead. And basically from there, hired an assistant, kind of built my own team, got my own showing specialist, and then kind of fast forwarding until today, we're 7 of us. So
Nice.
myself, I've got an ISA, and then basically 4 agents. One of them works directly with me, kind of as my right-hand man doing all of my showings, and then 3 independent buyers agents.
Amazing. So Steve, I know you have some questions for Emma because you guys haven't met before, and I think you guys will get along well. Let's see what you got, Steve.
Let's do it.
Well, I actually had a couple of questions because I did look at Tom only sent me we have a shared notes page for this, and it's
cool.
Like guess this week, and it's just name, and that's it. That's the prep. So I got to Google you and kind of find out what's going on. So I have probably a question I want to get into, which I think a lot of people are going to be interested in, but I don't think a lot of agents are going to talk about. And that is, I want to know, when we're talking to people like you that are just murdering it, what does that look like? How many deals are we doing a year?
I think this year our target will be to probably do around 100. But with that being said, just to kind of preface this whole thing, my team's relatively new, right? So I've scaled up fairly quickly. I brought my showing specialist on. He's been with me for 3 years now. And then when I actually hired my ISA, just to kind of give you an idea of like how this whole team got built out, I was like, okay, I need to make $1 million. Like, I don't know why, but that was just always my Everest, right? So
Yep.
when I started in real estate, I said, if I could make 6 figures, I'm crushing it. Like,
Yeah.
that would be like, if someone gave me a contract and said you could make $100,000 for the rest of your life, I would have signed it for sure, right? And then I was like, it would be insane. There's absolutely no way that I can fathom in my brain how someone would make $1 million. Like, it seems unfathomable to me.
Revenue?
And then
Revenue?
Revenue, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just like, I don't know, you know? At the end of the day, I'm literally this kid that came from London, Ontario. Nobody's in my family has ever been like super successful or done business or anything. You know, as a DJ for a long time, there's no part of me that's like, oh, you're like this incredible like entrepreneur when you're a kid. You're just like, what the fuck? People make $100,000. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So we started to get to a point where, you know, I learned that leverage thing where it was like, I need to buy some of my time back. And so the first thing, I had kind of like a shared assistant, and I go, okay, well, I'm doing too many showings. I don't think that I always need to be there to show a house. I can teach somebody else how to show a house and like what that protocol looks like. So I brought my showing specialist on, and then that scaled me up quite a bit. And then instead of getting an ISA for a team, like most people would just get an ISA for their team, I was like, dude, you and I can do this.
This is inside baseball. Hang on. This is inside baseball. That is inside sales agent for everybody that's not a realtor.
And by the way,
Yes.
I find that the ISA model is very American, and I actually don't know too many local Ontario agents or even Canadian agents that have really figured that out. So for someone listening being like, okay, what's an ISA? Like, what is an ISA job on a daily basis?
So an ISA job is prospecting, right?
Okay.
And so if you're an agent listening to this, the main thing that your brokerage is going to tell you is you need to prospect to find new business. And I was like, I can teach somebody else to make calls. I can teach somebody else to tee up my appointments for me so that essentially, you know, I have leverage on both sides. I have leverage on people coming in. I acquire the clients. I do the whole relationship thing. Like, you know, our skill sets as team leaders are like people management and people relationship and negotiations. We crush those things. And I'm like, those are like literally my zone of genius. Those are the things I knock out of the park. I can make calls and I can do showings, but are they my highest dollar per hour tasks? I didn't really think so. I thought if I had 1,000 leads in my pipeline, I should only be talking to the ones that want to talk to me as well. And so I might as well teach somebody else how to have that conversation, right? So an ISA will do, you know, the calls for the team and set up appointments and kind of pre-qualify leads. And, you know, you can hire companies to do it. They aren't as much in alignment with your goals as bringing someone in-house, in my opinion. And so I hired my own personal ISA just for my own business because we were doing so much. And then, they'd set up the appointment.
Is that person physically with you every day, or are they somewhere else in the world, or where is the ISA?
Yeah. My ISA lives in Toronto. Like I've never had somebody that was outside of our market.
Gotcha.
They're not necessarily physically with me every day, but like they're on our team calls. You know, they're as integrated as part of the team as any agent is, essentially, right? And
Tom,
so
Tom, you want to know a secret? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just hired an ISA. She starts next week.
Really? There you go.
Well, it's to transition to agent. It's to transition, but it's like start at that spot. Yep. And exactly what you're saying, right? Like I know now, so I've got 2 problems currently, and I'd be interested to get both your perspectives on this. One is YouTube is working so well for me right now to meet and get introduced to new people that I've got, is going to sound cocky, but almost too many leads, right? So now I have to disperse them to my team to be managed correctly and all that stuff. But as a result of that, I'm not necessarily connecting as well with my repeat and referral business that I used to, right? Because all of our, our big events and our parties we used to have and our charity events and all that stuff has all been shut down for 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how this is going to go. So instead, I'm not going to turn my nose up at, let's call it, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars already this year from YouTube. I'm not going to do it. But at the same time, it's like, what do I do? Well, I have to still connect with the old people. So I have to hire someone to help me balance out that. And like you say, have to leverage my time. Otherwise, I'm going to be the busiest divorced agent in town, right?
Not
100%.
currently divorced, by the way.
Avoiding that. That is the worst way. Avoiding the divorce is the best way to keep your business profitable, right?
Totally.
Emma, I was going to ask you, so I think if someone's listening and they hear that you work for Zoocasa, they go, hey, isn't that company that Rogers owned that I heard on the radio with all the ads? So can you walk us through, I know the answer to this, but for people listening, can you walk us?
I do not.
Steve does.
I do not know the answer. And this was my question for Tom. I was like, wait a minute. What are these with this Zoocasa people? Aren't these the people that tried to bankrupt our industry a couple years ago? Like what?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well, okay. So, but Zoocasa was introduced by, was it Rogers?
It was owned by Rogers. As far as I know, it was owned by Rogers in the past. And essentially what it was, it was just a lead gen program at the end of the day. It was just a search site. And then, agents could sign up and it was basically like a lead distribution for people in the industry. So therefore there's no continuity in terms of service or anything like that, because if you're just signing up for some lead generation service to look at listings or whatever happens to be, and then the leads are getting distributed to Remax, Royal LePage, like it doesn't matter what the brokerage is. There's zero continuity between brand, and you're like, are these Zoocasa agents? Are they not? Yeah. And so I think what ended up happening was there was probably some like negative media exposure for Rogers as a result of this, because then leads aren't being, or it's terrible to say leads, I guess that's how we kind of conduct them, but like buyers or sellers are not being treated with the same level of service that you would otherwise expect on a team or from a brokerage or whatever it happens to be. And so then that gives you bad brand exposure. And so Rogers just said, like, we're just going to dump this thing. Let's just sell it. But they had spent so much money developing the brand, the website, they had staff, they had all of these things. And so our current CEO, Lauren, went in there with investors and basically purchased all of the assets off of Zoocasa. And then we essentially rebranded it as like an in-house brokerage and tech company.
So at some point, it's basically like, I've always viewed it as like the Canadian Redfin, right? It would be a lead gen and then promise some sort of, this is how it was brought in. Anyway, this hasn't been like 6 or 7 years since I thought Zoocasa was gone because they're not in my market, but it was brought in to try and be a disruptor, right? It is my understanding. So
my vision or like understanding of what it is, having been there for so long, this is the one brokerage that I've spent the bulk of my career with. It's how do we provide a seamless experience, click to close, basically, right? Like how do you start on our website and finish with our in-house team, start to finish? And so that was kind of what we've tried to build out over the last little while. And so basically, our website's one of the larger ones for like property search, and it's a similar thing to kind of condos.ca or properties.ca. You sign up to get access to the listings, and then if you so choose, you can get connected with an agent, but like you can start to finish do everything on the website. And I so happen to run a team there.
I think it's cool because what it is today is much different than what it was previously, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting to hear. Like, I'm actually happy to get this feedback from you guys, because I think there obviously are some opportunities that are still present in terms of how the brand is being received or perceived by the public. So I think it's definitely something to bring to the attention of like upper management and stuff there. But yeah, it's different. Like the goal is, more tech company than anything, right? We were one of the first websites to have sold data, right? And we were one of the first websites to have school districts. So you can go in there and say, hey, well, my kid's in grade 3 and I want to be in a certain Fraser ranking, and then it just draws the map for you. So it's how do we make this easier for consumers, not only on like the search side of things, but on like the service side of things as well. So yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty cool company to work for. And like I started there when we were actually a team at Keller Williams. I think there was like 5 or 6 of us. And then they said, okay, we're going to like open our own brokerage. We're going to we're going to jump ship from like Keller. And so we've gone from 5 agents to I think we've got like 170 or 180 or something now.
Wow.
And yeah, to go from like, 2 staff, one guy that was like writing blogs for the website, 1 client care coordinator, and then like an operations manager, to now having, several different departments and stuff. It's just been really, inspiring more than anything. I think to see like, I don't want to say average humans. Lauren is by no means an average human. She's an exceptional business person, but to see someone who is like within arm's reach of you grow this amazing thing, it's really inspiring to be like I said earlier, you have like this imposter syndrome, like why would this happen to me, or how could this happen for me, or whatever it is. And now I'm like, okay, I need to get over this. Like I can run a $5 million business. Like
I love it.
I need to get over this. For sure, I have the capabilities. I just got to do the work, and I got to keep pushing through the shitty times because they're inevitably going to happen, right?
Emma, can you do me a favor?
Yes.
Tom is, if you're watching this on YouTube, Tom is like, his eyebrows are going really mean because he hears a little bit of an echo. Could you turn down your audio just a touch?
Yeah.
We'll cut this part out.
I think it's coming. No, we're not cutting this part out. This is the best part. You brought out, hey man, reality is what I want. And that's why I think this podcast is so awesome. I don't know if it'll even pick up on the audio recording.
No, I think I can't hear it anymore. There was a little bit of feedback, but it's gone now.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
I have a question for you because you had mentioned, sold data, and sold data was such a thing. For anybody that's listening that's not inside the industry, TREB, which is your guys' real estate board or whatever, has fought.
Whatever. It's the biggest real estate board in the world. Don't just brush it off.
Let's not go there. I don't want to get in trouble. So they fought with the Competition Bureau forever to keep sold data private. And the thought behind keeping sold data private is, meaning when your property sells, should the public have full access, whether or not yes or no, to the information. Now, the old school realtors did the stupidest thing I think possible, which was what we did in the 80s and 90s, I guess, which is keep all of the information away from the people. Therefore, they have to come to you for the business. They have to. So that's kind of their thing. And then the Competition Bureau says, no, we are going to make this information readily and freely available to absolutely everybody because the people should have the right to make the choices. Now, I firmly stand halfway in the middle of those things, and I'll tell you why. I don't think sold data should be published at the time of firm. Okay. I think sold data should only be published at the time of completion because, for instance, right now in our market, I don't know about you guys, there's deals not completing. So that property wasn't worth that much money, right? So now that information is out there. So my thought is, and I also think that if you did that, if you publish sold data on completion rather than firm, then you would also slow down the market because you wouldn't have these people bidding week after week after week. You wouldn't find out for 3 months what that property actually sold for. Now, I think everybody should have that info, but the reason I don't like it is actually a privacy thing. Emma, you promised to buy my house for $1 million, and the day after it goes firm, your parents find out that you spent more than your dad thinks he should, or whatever the case is. I don't have that money in my pocket yet, so that's none of your damn business, right? That's the way I view it. So I think if our system was smart, they would have, like Realtor.ca would have a sold firm, sold pending comes off the market, and then like a sold closed kind of category to go, okay, and then push that out. No passwords, no nothing. That money has changed hands, and then the seller is also protected. So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Steve, don't you think though, if that happened, realtors would just call each other and say, "Hey, what did you actually get for that place?" In between the firm to closing, which is kind of like what it was before when the data wasn't out there
Yeah,
to
but
the
if you're going to
public.
implement that, you have to put that, like, that's what they do in the States, right? If you have a pending deal all the way to close, you can't tell anybody what that deal is. Right.
My argument on it was, hey, if we did it that way, maybe it would slow the acceleration of prices because you wouldn't see it happening so fast. But then a few American agents were like, no, our markets are still going crazy right now too. It's not doing anything. So Emma, thoughts on that?
It's challenging. The one thing that comes to my mind is like the appraisal process.
Mm.
And it's like, well, I guess I'm having a hard time grasping how the bank would react to that. It's one thing on like how, because would the bank have the information of that then?
Do you know that if an appraisal is done correctly by a licensed appraiser, at least in BC, they are only allowed to use closed transactions. They are not allowed to use firm transactions. Now, I know they all do, and I know that that's probably a major flaw, but they are only actually supposed to use closed transactions, which is crazy to me.
I definitely don't.
I think it would slow the market.
Like, I think it would slow the market as well. I have to agree with you on that. I don't know. I would need to chew on that a little bit more. The appraisal thing, I don't know. I don't know my opinion on it. I'd have to think about it a little more. I think the one thing that I would change from like the sold data online, and I know this is like a tech thing, but I've been thinking about this for a while. I am a firm believer that the consumer should have as much information as possible. I think an informed consumer makes the absolute best clients. Like if you guys think about the best clients you've worked with, they've probably come off YouTube because they've done so much research. They come prepared. They know you. They want to know about
that shouldn't be the question, I don't think, Emma. What should be the question to me or for me, maybe because I'm an old geezer now, how much of my private information is your business? That is my point of view, right? So like I'm thinking like privacy now is gone, right? That anybody under the age of 35 probably doesn't value privacy in the same way. And that's going to be a real problem for old farts like me, right? Like I just don't, I don't think that the amount I pay for a house or the amount I receive for a house should be known by my neighbor because, I mean, should I know their bank account? Should I know what stock holdings they have? Should I know all of their private information, right? So just because I'm offering something for sale to the public doesn't mean the public has the right to all of my private data. So that is, and that's the part that I found strange about the Competition Bureau, because the privacy commissions, like they're in contradiction of each other. Right. And they're both government. So, and they've basically said, the Competition Bureau, I could be wrong, please don't come after me, Competition Bureau. They basically said the privacy of our citizens has nothing to do with our mandate of competition. So screw you. Right. And that's the part that I'm struggling with, which is, I just think that we should value privacy probably more than our society is going to be doing in the future.
Steve, do you think, and now your opinion on this is just only until the transaction closes, right? Because I can go to the Toronto Public Library right now as a citizen, and I can look up addresses and who owns what properties, and I can find out what they paid. If I really want, you got to bring your own keyboard, but you can do it. So like,
yeah, you can go down to land title office, or you can go on the taxation authority and find out what a property transferred for, and that is public record, right? Public record might be the thing, right? Like if you're going to do that, then there are public records that should be there. I don't know. There's something, I think there's a lot of people that will maybe start walking away from transactions, particularly in a declining market where it's as a result of their parents told them they paid too much, or their parents told them to get out of the deal, or whatever, right? Like I have such a problem with everyone knowing everyone else's business. And that is a fairly new phenomenon within the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a strong argument there, like without question. But I think the point of allowing the public to have access to this data, regardless of if there's a time delay on like the release of the information. Having access to that information, I think, is really important. Like I could never get behind why agents would not want the public to be able to make a more informed decision or have access um, to make a decision with all of the information, because you know that there's going to be agents out there that choose comps to make an argument to support their data.
Sure.
So therefore everybody should have equal access to the information to make their own arguments with all of the information. And so there was never a point for me where I'm like, the only person who stands to win is me as the agent, because I could just choose particular comps that would support the information that I'm trying to like send across to my clients, I guess, at the end of the day. I think the challenge is these algorithms for suggested sale price are the things that I actually have challenge with, because they're not accurate. I think they don't take many variables into consideration. I don't know squat about how these algorithms work, but what I do know is that they're inefficient and
They're
that
wrong.
they do set the wrong expectations for the marketplace. So that's the one thing that I actually have a problem with, to be honest.
One thing that I found scary, and we're going to leave brokerage names out of this conversation. There are different brokerages in different markets that give you guesstimates on what a property is worth. I heard someone in the appraisal industry literally say that sometimes they reference some of these sites, which I'm like, oh my God. And like right now where properties are switching to not having offer dates and this is the real price. And then you go to one of these sites and it says like, it's worth 200 grand more. It's not. And somebody that thinks they're smarter than the system and thinks, oh, I got tech to save me here, I'm just going to go straight to the listing agent. I'm going to pay this price they said it's worth.
Yeah.
Is in a bad spot.
Tom, worse than that. What's going to happen to certain brokerages that are now guaranteeing you your sale price because they could do that business model in an inclining market without any problems? And now, so here's I know this, we're getting back to, there's two notes I have, and one was from Tom and one was from me. So we'll get to the second one later. But the first one was Tom wanted to discuss disruptors in the industry and exactly what's going on. And this is segueing us perfectly into this, because I have very strong opinions on why I think those algorithms will never work. I don't think they will ever work. And that is because you're not solving the same problem twice, right?
Totally.
You think of why was Uber so successful? Why was Lyft so successful coming in? Because the problem is I need to transport a person from location A to location B. This is the same problem every single time. So when you think of it from and maybe, having that kind of tech brokerage that you have, you may be able to expand on this a little bit, but like we have to now solve a different problem every single transaction. And people think out there, well, no, the algorithms will figure that out. No, they won't. They won't figure out, when I buy this house, is the crawl space leaking? How much will that repair be? Can I do certain work in a certain city without permits? Right? Like they will never figure this stuff out, because when those algorithms, like, when Zillow was like selling off their property not long ago, it was because it was too cumbersome. And a company like Zillow cannot get away with a little bit of unpermitted work like an individual seller can, or a renovator that works in that town, right?
Yep.
So because they're never solving the same problem twice, their variables or their cost of making an error is too high, and it will always put them out of business.
Yeah, and that's the biggest, I guess, complaint. And I've even talked to the developers at Zoocasa, because we have the algorithm. And there's been times where people are like, I don't want to pay this price because of X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, it's a great, you know what? It is a great reference point. There is no part of me that doesn't think it's a great reference point. But to be able to get across to people that you can't take that over a seasoned agent's experience, taking into consideration human emotion, permitting. Like, there's so many additional variables that don't go into that, that there's a part of me that's like, it's a great reference point, but is there an inflection point of it being dangerous, of overpaying, or actually putting someone in a position where they have the wrong expectations and then the market gets away from them in an up market because they keep thinking they're going to buy a property at this particular price and they're being unrealistic about it. You know what I mean? So I that's the one part of the sold data that has always, I don't want to say rubbed me the wrong way, but it's, again, something that I agree with you. Like, you can't, I don't think there's a way to make it perfect.
But we have to give credit to. So whether it's Zillow or other companies that, because Zillow was really the big one that started it with this estimate, right, in the States. Is that they've won over the consumer. The consumer looks at it and trusts it, whether right or wrong, because they will say, oh no, this says this. And as a real estate industry, at least in Canada, Realtor.ca that we own, they don't have a tool like this. So they're going to go to other sites to find this information because we're not giving it to them, right?
Sure.
But Tom, why did they win over the consumer in the States? Right? That's what you have to ask yourself. So Realtor.ca is owned by CREA and it is owned by the realtors in Canada.
Yep.
Realtor.com is owned by a newspaper and does not have all of the listings. So the reason Zillow got so successful in the States is because they were able to consolidate the majority, not all, but the majority of listings. So they gave the best consumer experience, right? Their estimates have nothing to do with it. I think people are going to pick whichever the highest estimate is, no matter if it's their agent telling them that or the computer, right? Like, for instance, taxation, right? Everybody in the world will go to the tax form from the government for their property tax, but my property's assessed at this and the government says it's worth it. It's like, they'll trust the guy that has never seen their property ever and took an outside, like in our area anyway, it used to be, they would literally go around, they would hire kids on bicycles to go take a picture of the outside of the house before Google Earth, right? Like, that's how it happened. And they'll trust that assessment that still says it's a 1,300 square foot house when they finish the whole basement and put in a rental suite downstairs and 4 more bathrooms. And they'll be like, oh no, I need 20% over that because that's always been the mathematical equation for the exact value of my home, right?
You know what? I think on the mobile side, a lot of these apps that have become brokerage have created a better experience than anything we are offering them on the Canadian Real Estate Board side. And they're winning people over that way. And then when they're on there all day long and sending us listings through these different sites and being like, well, you could have gone to Realtor.ca. Why did you not go there? Because it wasn't as robust. And the sad reality is some of these apps, even for me, it's easier for me to quickly look something up on my phone on these apps than it is for me to log into my system as a paying realtor to get this information. So it's no wonder why they've won over the public, because it's a better system. It's so much easier to use.
But that's why you guys are both so successful at what you do, because who gets the business? The person that gives the customer what they want with the best experience, period. And those websites with all of that backing behind them do that, right? So now do they have the business of buying and selling homes? No. Do they have the business of starting the consumer off on a path? Because let's face it, like, those companies, usually their income is not from helping people buy and sell homes. Their income is from selling leads to agents.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, but now that they have the eyeballs, what can they convert that to? And I'm going to go back to my previous example of Uber. Uber, coolest thing ever. It was awesome. You could get a car. Everything worked. Uber now, in my neighborhood anyway, I tried to take it last week from a restaurant, and Uber in my neighborhood now is 4 times the price of a cab.
So can I tell you why?
Because they have market share and they can.
Yeah. So there's actually a really good show on, I think it's HBO Max, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's in it, and it's talking about Uber from the perspective of the initial founder. And he had basically said, once we get people to take it twice, we've got them hooked. And his analogy was, parking used to be free at Disneyland. It was free to go to Disneyland. Then it was $1. Then it was $2. Then it's $20. Then it's $50. But guess what? People are still going to Disneyland because their kids want to see Goofy. Okay, so you win them over at the beginning, and like in Toronto, Uber at the beginning was so much cheaper than a cab and a way better experience. I won't take a cab. I'll always take Uber. It's better. Even now, if it's more expensive, I'd rather take it because it's an easier transaction. But also, you're like Steve in BC, they were not as friendly to Uber as Ontario was when it came to the market, anyways.
They're not, but I mean, literally, like I went to, you guys know Vikram Vij?
Yeah.
He's Dragon's Den.
Dragon's
guy,
Den, right?
his
Yeah,
restaurant. I actually saw him too, and I got a side story about that if you ever want to hear it. He was there. But I sit like when you're flipping open the apps, right, on the way home, it's like $78 to go 4 kilometers. Or I phoned the taxi, like literally still, hey, can you come get me? And they were there in 4 minutes, and it was a $14 ride, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know. At some point, you're gonna lose customers because you don't, because you're just gonna grind, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to what people value, right? And I think that's why it's important that as an agent, you're not somebody who does all of the things. You're someone who does one or two things really, really well. And so the disparity between a $78 Uber and a $14 cab, most people are like, okay, it's an absolute no-brainer. I'd just pay the $14 for a cab. But there's also people out there that go, I literally don't give a shit about money, and I don't want to call the cab. I just want to press yes, and I just want the guy to show up.
Have you seen,
Right?
there's a new option on Uber called Uber Comfort. It's the middle one. I clicked on it by mistake last week, and it was $5 more for my ride, and the only difference was
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the YouTube for Real Estate video course. Are you interested in creating an engaging, value-driven YouTube channel to help educate your client base on real estate in your market, as well as introduce a new revenue stream to your business? Perhaps you've already created a YouTube channel, but are struggling to gain viewership and the subscribers you are looking for. The YouTube for Real Estate course will provide you with proven tips and strategies on how to create and cultivate an engaging YouTube channel, as well as how to optimize your channel, resulting in higher viewership, subscribers, and yes, deals. But that's not it. I implemented YouTube in my business in early 2021, and it has easily been the best marketing source for meeting new clients that I have ever had in my business, period. Better than expensive geo-farming, internet marketing, and open houses combined. And now it even rivals my repeat and referral business. If you would like to learn all the tips and tricks for meeting new clients using YouTube, simply go to Video Course Login or click the link in the description below and sign up for the YouTube for Real Estate course today. And learn a year's worth of my painstaking research of learning how to use YouTube for real estate in just a few hours by taking the YouTube for Real Estate course. So go to videocourselogin.com right now and use the promo code TOMSHOW at checkout. Again, that's videocourselogin.com or simply use the link below.
you could slide this scale. Do you want conversation or not? And what do you want the temperature to be? So that was a $5 premium. Do I want the driver to talk to me or not? And what do I want the temperature to be? That's built in now. That's kind of interesting.
That's super interesting.
It's gonna be that, right? Like you have to weigh those things for sure. If the difference between an Uber and a cab is $10, I'm taking the Uber for convenience, right? But you have to weigh those things, and you have to find out where the experience is going to be. And what we can't do in this industry is end up like the cabs did. Think about the cabs. All they had to do was these multi-million-dollar huge cab companies just had to come up with a central app.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they had to do. That's it. And they could still now, and they don't. Yeah. So what we have to do is not do that as an industry. And I think this group that's on here right now, and Tom and I are very much learning with the YouTube side of stuff and reaching new people like we never have before, it is about, like you were saying, Emma, the transparency and experience, and experience being the client experience, right?
Yeah.
People are reaching out because I think Tom is giving them value that no other agent is, because everybody else is a smiling face in an open house.
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
And now that they've got to know Tom for 15 minutes a week, every single week for the last 5 years, right? So that is a good way. I think most people are going to start setting themselves apart in our industry.
I wanted to.
So let me ask you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go.
I was going to say, I want to ask you guys each a question on the topic of Uber.
Sure.
What is one thing that you think an agent can do, or we can do as an industry, to not be the cab? How do we progress, and what are we missing as an industry? What is the app that we're missing? Or maybe we have the app, but it doesn't have the features, right? Like, what are we missing?
I would almost say it's the other side of it, where it's like the complication of, okay, the finding the house, the making an offer. Tech companies have tried to solve that, right? It's the getting the inspection. It's the which lawyer you're going to use. It's the all this paperwork. It's all of that due diligence after the fact that to this point, no system has been able to figure it out. Zillow tried in the States and they failed, and like their CEO was open about it. So I think that's one of the pieces. And then on top of that, it's like, if you were the agent that said, I don't want data to be out there, my only value proposition is I have access to the sold data, or back in the day, I have access to the listings, or whatever it is, you're not going to last very long anyways. And the new age consumers are educated. They understand. They look at the information, but they still don't know that school maybe has a bad ranking, or that the neighbor actually owns the 3 lots beside them and they're going to do construction the next little while. Like, all those things are, I think, other than just the trust factor, why real estate agents are still here. And there will always be different models, right? It's like, there's the obvious, we do nothing, we're a mere posting, give us $500, we will put you on MLS, sell your house on your own. Okay, fine. There'll be a portion of the market of that. Then there's the discount brokerage. We're cheaper. We'll do photos. We'll put it on MLS. We will represent you, but you don't get any additional services like staging and then there's the full service model, which all 3 of us have taken, where it's like, you can be the Walmart of real estate, or you could be the Holt Renfrew of real estate, right? And there's going to be room for all of it. But since the sold data went public, I would assume, I'd have to look at the numbers, it's not like less people use realtors because of that.
I wouldn't know the data. I would assume I wouldn't assume that would be the case, but
No.
I think people make more informed decisions, or at least are coming to us with more knowledge than they have before, which I prefer.
I like it.
Well, they have the data now, right? People can get access to the data now. Do they know how to interpret the data? That is, I mean,
not usually.
A lot of them. Right. Yeah, because here's what you're going to do. I joke with my wife about this all the time. We want to buy something, and then we spend the next week talking to each other about why it's such a good choice to do, right? So I want to, for instance, right now, I'm looking at putting in a home gym. I want to put in a home gym. So now I have to spend the week with my wife talking about why this equipment is better than that equipment, or how much money we're going to save because I'm not going to the gym, or whatever, right? So it's the same thing. You have made a decision for the price of your home, or what you want to do with your home. And there you're going to find the people that tell you what you want to hear, likely first, right? So getting back to Emma's question about what is our Uber so we don't become the cab company, I don't think we have the same problem, which is fixing a different problem every single time, because every single person's in a different situation, different house, different city. I do think that our industry is, I don't want to say doomed because that's too scary, but I believe our industry will always fall behind the 8 ball for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of the people that volunteer, and most of this is volunteer stuff, don't do a lot of the business. So it's you're getting a lot of feedback from people that aren't necessarily providing service continuously. They're only selling, the occasional house. But really, it's too cumbersome, right? Like, Zillow can shift on a dime and sell 7,000 houses overnight. And we can't make realtor.ca better tomorrow. Yeah. Right. So I think if we as an industry want to take it seriously, realtor.ca needs to be the best customer experience out there. Has to be.
Hey, Steve, I just want to say that you putting a home gym in your house will really help with resale value, because I know you will never use it. And it'll be a brand new gym when you sell your house to whoever the new owner is. Nothing will ever be used.
Killing me, Tom. Hey, this episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you again by Tums. If you are an over 40 agent who takes out all of his stresses by eating and drinking too much, Tums. Anyway, let's keep going.
I got some. I want to shift it to more kind of what's going on right now in the market. So Emma, I want to read you 3 headlines. I literally just went to Google this morning and just screenshotted 3 headlines I saw. Right? Okay. So the first one is the markets now see an 80% chance of Bank of Canada will hike 75 basis points in July. Okay, so that was the first one. The second one says Toronto housing crash up to 36% in some GTA suburbs since February. I think we already kind of knew that. And the third one says home prices expected to plummet across Ontario, but Toronto should remain hot. I read those 3 things. I'm like, well, what is it? Is Toronto remaining hot? Or so what's your sense right now on the market? Because our listings are sitting right now. We're getting a few showings a week. We're getting deals together, but it's not easy. It's really taking time. How do you see this playing out, and what are you experiencing right now?
So right now I am doing more research than I've ever done.
Yeah.
I'm doing 2 to 3 hours of research to try and come to these conclusions, probably like a day, right? So I think these headlines, I think we live in like a headline reading community, right? Everyone reads the headlines and then they don't read the context of the story. And I think right now it's really important to be like, okay, if you're only a headline reader, you need to read the context or the meat and potatoes of the story. And if you were a meat and potatoes reader, you need to understand where the facts and what the actual substance of the story comes from. So I guess for the second one there, you said it was like a 36% price decline or something
in suburbs markets.
Right. So I guess the question I have is, were they talking specifically about like the peak of the market? Because I had seen some last week that were saying, oh, the market's going to go down by 20%. I'm like, whoa, we're already there, bro. You're like a little bit behind the times. What are you talking about? It might. It already is.
And half the time they say market down 20%, but don't say that it was sales down 20%, not average price, which is on its own confusing to a consumer just looking at it, right?
Totally. So I think the headlines more so now than ever when it comes to real estate are amazing for clickbait, but you need to understand like what the substance is, right? Toronto is remaining strong. And technically the third one, if you just look at that in terms of context, it gives you the perception, or at least the way I received the information was that Toronto's not making any moves going forward. I don't think that that's the case. I think Toronto will be one of the stronger markets out of all of the markets, but do I think it's going to soften? I think if interest rates continue to rise, the market in Toronto is going to soften. I don't think it's going to stay the same. I just think it's going to hold a little better than everybody else. And the way that I received that headline was like, if you live in Toronto, don't worry about it. We're good. And I don't actually think that that's the case. I think it's somewhat misleading.
No, I mean, prices have dropped in our market 4 months in a row, and I think they will continue to drop minimum until the end of August. And me and Steve were talking about this before. Like, if you're a seller and you want a February price, we were saying like minimum, you're waiting 18 months, and that's best case scenario to get back to that, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. So you got to do more research now. Like, if you're actually serious, you have to do more research now. It was really easy to be like, I want to buy something when the market's going up and I know I'm going to have to pay. Like, that's easy. That's the easiest. You actually don't have to do that much research. Talk to an agent, something's happening and the market's going one way. It's like, I just think like this doom and gloom fear mentality that's just being pushed out there is not unsubstantiated. Like, it's a cause for concern. However, it also presents opportunities. And if you want to put yourself in like this turtle shell and just say like, hit me up when everything's over, you're missing a potential opportunity to better your life if you're just going to continue to live in fear. Like, that's kind of my thoughts around it.
I think those things can all be kind of true at the same time, because I do think anybody living in my market, Vancouver is going to do better than the burbs. this year,
Sure.
right? Because the burbs grew too much too fast. And now with the bank doing exactly the opposite of what they said they would do, which is keep interest rates low, I'm viewing it this way. Sure, the cities are going to do better. Going to go back to maybe normal, where the suburbs shouldn't be as much as the cities. But I'm viewing it this way right now. The Bank of Canada screwed up really bad by keeping interest rates too low for too long. And they're screwing up really bad by increasing them too fast.
Yeah.
So it's like everything they're doing is like, you guys created the problem. Now you're fixing the problem and creating a problem.
They came late to the party and realized they were late and then got drunk really fast to try to catch up to everybody else. And now they're like, we're going to have to escort them out soon because they're
and
not
now we got to
behaving.
deal with the hangover as, you know, the rest of the party, they do something embarrassing at the party and we got to deal with the hangover. But like, you know what happens after a hangover? Your day sucks and then you go back to real life. You drink some water, get some McDonald's and move on, you know? And
I have a theory about hangovers. Hangovers are because there's only so much fun in a day, and you've taken some of that fun from tomorrow, or when you're over 40 from 2 days from now, and you're going to feel the hurt the next day, right? So that is likely maybe we are the hangover. Tom, your next video, the 2021 real estate hangover, because that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to take some of the fun. We've stolen some of the fun from future market of this year and next year, probably out of, into last year.
Yeah. And for sure, I agree with you. But I think, if you're an opportunistic person, don't just go out there and buy anything, but like you might be able to purchase AAA quality real estate at a discount, which is very unusual. And so therefore that is a very strong opportunity for you, your financial future, or just your lifestyle and your family for 25 years from now to be able to buy the house of your dream in the school district of your dream that you could never otherwise get into, that has now kind of pulled back. And you're like, oh, should I do this? Should I not do this? And then 36 months from now, you look back and go, I should have capitalized on that opportunity because I can never get it in that school district again.
Totally. I mean, this is literally what I'm trying to do right now. I've got one of my condos on the market right now. We might be getting an offer soon, Steve. There's my little update. It's been going better the last few days. And once I sell that, I'm buying a house because I don't care if the prices go down for a few more months. Like, this is my 10-year house. And you can't guarantee anything in the core of Toronto proper market. And maybe you can make the same argument for Vancouver, surrounding areas. Steve, tell me if I'm wrong. In 5 years from now, looking back at today's moments, we're going to look at some opportunities and been like, damn, that was an opportunity. But everyone is scared right now and waiting. And even a guy in my office told me he was going to make an offer on a property yesterday. He got a text from his client with an article saying 1 in 4 Canadians will be forced to sell if prices go up. You know that article? And his client was like, no, okay, never mind. I'm like, oh my God. So they're really getting in the heads of people. They're going to get the information from somewhere. Might as well be from someone that actually does it on a daily basis.
Can I jump in on that? Can I please? Sorry, Emma. I was going to do a video, and then I saw, Nolan Mathias did a video on it, and I was like, I'm going to have nothing nice to say here because, and you mentioned earlier about like the clickbait stuff. Emma, just so you know, I have my number one video on my channel is like 220,000 views, and I basically like took the clickbait and just moved it into my title, so they do know what they're doing, right?
For sure.
But that article came out like that. Okay, I should just steal their headlines and I'll get way more viewership.
Mm-hmm.
That article came out and it said, 1 in 4. It's done by Manulife, right?
Yeah.
1 in 4 people surveyed think that they'll have to sell their home or whatever. Because interest rates are going up. Then when you read the article, it actually says, also admittedly, 1 in 3 people don't know what the word inflation means. Right? So it's like, okay. So that survey is of 2,000 people. First of all, who takes surveys? Emma, when's the last time you took a survey?
I don't know, man. I have no idea.
Did they phone people? Did they literally like call up Mildred and she answered her home phone and it wasn't somebody from Nigeria trying to get her money. It was Manulife, right? Like, this is insanity it's sentiment among 2,000 randomly polled Canadians, and it is a garbage article. It does read into saying, hey, people are scared, right? That's it.
Great headline, though.
And
we're talking about it.
We're talking about it right now. I've talked about it with, I think, 2 or 3 people in the last day. I'm saying that the headlines work, especially in an environment like, you guys have done a ton of sales training. One of the things that they say in sales training is like, the biggest thing that will typically get somebody or cause somebody to take action is if you can discuss their fears more so than their desires, right? And so fear is a stronger emotion that we feel as a human being. So of course you're going to get 1 million clicks on a fear-based headline because people react more strongly to fear-based headlines. You're going to continue to see them. Like, it's not going to turn around anytime soon. I think, we're significantly down from the peak. If you look at like the S&P and the Dow, I was looking at it last night. I think we're like 19% from the top.
I've stopped looking at my stocks. I don't look anymore.
100%. I don't look at my portfolio, but I like to look at the market as a whole because I just don't want to be, crushed and crippled and cry. But there are tons of opportunities in the marketplace. And like, I think technically, if you have negative GDP growth 2 quarters in a row, you're in like a formal recession. Like, I think that's the technicality of it, right? So therefore, whether or not we admit it or not from the States perspective, because I think we actually had GDP growth for Q1 in Canada, but it's mid-June right now. So we're about to find out in 15 days if we are in, what would by definition be a recession. And then people are going to start panicking and freaking out and all that kind of stuff when it's like internalized and more formal. Right. But like, we're already into this like a couple of months, boys. If it's not like we're on month 1 right now. We're like on month 4 or month 5, right? Yeah. So there has to be an inflection point to get back around.
It's like you're saying, Emma, with opportunity, right? Like I do look at my portfolio every day and it makes me cry just a little bit every morning when I look at it. But I bought on Wednesday. I have a schedule, and my schedule for my investments is, after I work out my corporation and pay myself for the month and do all these things, I buy. Yeah. And I'm going to continue to buy. And sure, I might wait for the bottom and blah, 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 blah. But my retirement is at least 20 years away. So I will be buying every single 13th or 14th of the month for the next 20 years. And I am going to absolutely crush anybody that waits for the top and the bottom of the market. I absolutely know that. And I think housing is no different.
Oh man, the market timing is, I've never had so many conversations. Like my team right now is doing on average 12 to 1,500 calls a week right now.
Crazy.
Between like all of us, right? And so the reason we're doing that is because we're less active with clients in the marketplace. Therefore, we need to take more action and have more conversations about what's going on. It's very easy if you're always out with clients, you get a really good scope of what's happening. It was really easy to get people to the door in February. You couldn't get a deal done because everybody wanted to put pen to paper and write a contract. So you could get 1 million people to the door. Right now, you could get any contract you want done, but you can't get anybody to show up at the front door. Right?
That's interesting.
The actual sales cycles is much different. You could buy any house. You could be the only person for any house right now, but you won't knock on the door. Before, you're like, I want to go see every single house. I'll put pen to paper on any house. I'll buy whatever I could possibly get. And it's just interesting to see like 12 to 1,500 calls a week. And the sentiment is, I'm just going to wait to see when the market starts to go back up, or I need to see some sort of stabilization and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you are too late.
Yeah.
You are too late. Now it's everybody rushing to the door again at the same time.
Herd mentality.
Trying to get a contract.
Last week we were saying me and Steve could tell people when they're listening when the market has bottomed out, but it will just be 2 or 3 months after it's happened. Because we can't tell you at the time. We can tell you after the fact when we look back, but at the moment you don't know.
Yeah. So everybody trying to time the market right now, I know it sucks. Like, who wants to put something under contract? And I guess to your earlier point, Steve, who wants to put something under contract today at $1 million and then see their neighbor sell for $950 tomorrow, right? Nobody wants to see that. But if this is your long-term plan and you love the house and you can afford it, there's no way for us to pinpoint you buying the $1 million house at 950. Like maybe we can try and forecast that, but that's timing the market and that's not actually helping you accomplish your goals. That's just like me trying to make very educated. I think I'm educated, and I think
it's gambling.
Make a calculated guess, but it is gambling. Yeah, for sure.
You're preaching to the choir. Okay, Tom, I promised in the last episode that if people would put a topic in the comments on the YouTubes, that we would try and get to at least one of them.
Okay.
So I want to do that here. Total change of topic. So I believe there was somebody, I think it was an agent in your area. I think it was, their handle was like living in Toronto or something like that. And they wanted to discuss density. We're getting that feedback again a little bit. Must be Tom. They wanted to discuss things like laneway houses, because that has been such an issue for affordability, I guess. So I'll give you a little bit of background here in Vancouver and then in my area of Surrey. So in Vancouver, they're making like in the back end, it's like a laneway house, like almost like a totally separate address. I think in some areas you can even like make them a separate address, right? Here, where in my marketplace, they are what we call coach homes, right? So they are off the laneway as well, but they're connected to the same address. They're basically a basement apartment, right? So are you guys seeing that in Toronto? Is that becoming a popular thing to try and address make housing more affordable? Because I actually have my thought on affordability is density doesn't make it more affordable. So.
It just makes it smaller.
Yeah.
It's what you get, you're still paying the same. It's just a smaller version of the other thing, right?
Yeah.
You might get a $700,000 place, but it's going to be more per square foot.
Well, I mean, you get the
100%.
emails, right? Like, are you getting the emails for laneway housing? There's that one guy, and every week he sends like
no, but I've done a little bit of research on it. But the whole thing that you're talking about right now brings me Jordan from Condo.
Yep.
Has this unbelievable graphic, which we looked at this month, which is basically a breakdown of 100% how much of 100% that goes into development, how much goes into land value, construction costs, soft costs, development charges, and then profit margins, right?
It was shocking. It was shocking what he posted.
So whether it's a massive builder or it's some individual dude that wants to put a laneway house to have potentially rental income or to provide more housing, land value is land value. Construction costs are construction costs. Development charges exist. And does it make it more affordable? No. Does it provide more housing? Yes. But we're already so short on supply, and now we have all these projects being canceled. So I'm sorry to say, but one laneway house in the back of some dude's house, I don't think is really going to move the needle that.
And also, most of these houses that have the allowance to do laneway housing, what you're basically doing is saying, I'm going to take my parking spot away and I'm going to build a little house back there because we don't have much front pad parking. So it's like, okay, we add a house to the back, but now there's no parking at the house. There's trade-offs with everything, right?
Yep.
The city of Vancouver has brought out this thing that I did. I think I did a video on it way back. It is like if you have a certain size lot, you can tear down the detached home that's there, and you can build between 4 and 6 stratified units.
Okay.
Right. So it's like a
small.
So
condo.
now it's going to be a small apartment building. It could be 2 basement suites, 2 like a duplex upstairs, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious because they pitched it like this. Susan lived in her house since the 1970s, and she, wants to help her daughter buy a property. So she also doesn't want to leave her community and blah, 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 right? They're like, so now instead, Susan can tear down her house that she can't afford the property taxes on and build a 6-plex, live in one, give one to her daughter. She has to sell one in affordable housing, which is like a maximum like $500,000 or something, and then she can sell off the other 2 or 3. And I'm like, oh yeah. This seems realistic.
Definitely down to do this for sure.
Yeah. She for sure can afford the $2.5 million in building costs and the 4 years of being out of her property.
Even if she could afford it, Susan's probably late 60s, early 70s, and she doesn't want to deal with this crap. Susan's trying to live her best life.
It's going to drive up the price for the developer, so he can now build 6 units on what. So it's actually going to drive up land value. And then the next one was like, Emma, Tom, and Steve are friends. They really love their neighborhood. So they buy a house together and they construct a fourplex and rent one out. It's like, oh my.
And now their friendship is over.
Yeah.
It like literally reminds me of like in grade 6 when they do those math equations, like Emma has 6 apples and Tom has 4. Steve has 3 oranges, and what's the answer? Not this one. Not what we're proposing.
Yeah.
That's too funny. So silly. Just absolute silliness. I don't think there's a fix for it, but what are you gonna do?
I don't know if there is. Steve, Emma is a much more important and much busier person than both of us, so I don't want to keep her here too much longer. But I actually wanted to ask you kind of like a cool personal question, Emma. So you came to a market. You didn't grow up in Toronto, correct?
No.
Okay. So you grew up in London, Ontario, which is a smaller town. 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours from Toronto?
2 hours, yep.
Yeah, 2 hours going west from Toronto. So you come here to start your real estate career. If there's an agent listening that is changing markets or starting anything new in a new place where they don't know a ton of people, like when you first came here, how did you make this happen? How did you build this up to this? Because it's pretty darn cool. I grew up here. I had an upper hand. I knew people. You came here brand new.
I knew absolutely no one, and I was 25. So therefore, my friends also could not afford to purchase real estate. And so I think a kind of twofold answer is I'm actually doing the same thing going back to London now. So now I have the upper hand because my team's expanding to London. That's where we're going next. But as a brand new agent, I wanted to, again, like, I guess I understood the concept of leverage without knowing the word, where I was like, how do I get ahead in a market where I know nobody? And that was, I was a showing specialist for somebody else. So I knew the protocol, and I joined a brokerage that ended up giving me leads so I could connect with people who were looking to buy and sell. And yes, I had to sacrifice a portion of commission. Yeah, I was down to do that. I was totally okay with it. I'm like, I will pay you guys for knowledge, and I will pay you guys to like leapfrog me. I'm just trying to think of, the people who have purchased with me in Toronto. There are very few people that have actually purchased with me in Toronto that I just knew from my own personal network before getting into real estate.
And
right.
And even if they knew you, I found when you're a brand new agent, your friends and family don't even trust you yet. You almost have to prove to them with strangers that you can survive before they come to you and be like, yeah, okay, fine. You're good at what you do. You proved it.
Yeah. Oh man. Even to today, it's like, with your parents, they're like, oh, well, you're still our kid. And you're like, no. Like we run a big business, and they're like, no, you're still our kid. Right. Where other people look at you and like, oh, you built this amazing thing. So I would say whatever you can do to get a couple deals under your belt, even if it costs you money to do so that you build that confidence, you get that book of business, and you treat them like gold so that you start to get repeat and referral, that would be my recommendation. And if you're a more seasoned agent, going into a different market, which is what I'm doing right now, it's take all of your systems and processes that have worked really, really well for you, be okay with spending some money, and market the hell out of yourself, show your expertise, and bring something different to the marketplace, right? Like in London, there are very few agents that deal with millennials. And like, to go back to, the Uber point that we made earlier, that's always been something that's been in the back of my mind, is we particularly deal with millennial buyers because I know that trends are heading towards people purchasing online. And I don't think real estate's going to be any different than that. And so therefore, immediately, as soon as I started to do this research, I'm like, I'm buying 2 Matterport cameras for my team so that my clients don't have to leave their house. If they're down to buy off the internet, we'll just go do the video for you at 9 a.m. My guys don't have to do the showing at, not 6 or 7 p.m. or whatever it is and waste their evening. If our clients are okay with purchasing online, we do an amazing Matterport video walk them through the process, give them our honest feedback, and it can either pre-qualify it or they can buy right online. So that's something that we do to like make the process easier.
And you'll do this. So Steve, she's doing this to listings that aren't even hers. Like you're showing a cooperating listing, bringing your own camera in to make it so easy for the consumer that they don't even have to physically be there if they don't want to be.
Totally. And it's a pre-qualifier, right? So if you have good trust with your clients, you can say, hey man, there honestly is a scratch on the floor here, or these walls should be painted or whatever. The camera's pretty good. Like it can pick up most of the stuff, but you got to be honest with your clients. And if your clients don't trust you, especially in today's market going forward, like agents are going to start cutting costs like crazy because there's, they don't want to pay for marketing expenses for their clients anymore. Just pay attention to the virtual staging. I've seen so many virtually staged condos in the last 2 weeks because people are like, I don't want to pay for staging if the place isn't going to sell. Right. So we'll go out there and we are paying for that for our clients to save them time. Potentially save the money. And like in a bull market, it was saving the money. They were able to get out there at 9 o'clock in the morning without being there at 9 o'clock in the morning to pre-qualify. Do I want to go back or do I just want to put in an offer? And then also from a service experience, when you're a buyer, like as agents, we're like, man, these buyers visits, these revisits, they're brutal. Like people are coming to measure one wall and you're like, dude, do you really need to measure that one wall? We just drove like an hour and a half out here. No, we do a full Matterport tour for our clients. If the agent doesn't have one, we want them to have a virtual walkthrough at midnight when they're like, is my dresser going to fit on this wall? They don't have to ask us, do we need to go back and do it? No, we'll just buy the floor plan. You have a virtual tour. It's just, again, these little things that you can do to provide extra value. And so those things are things that I think are going to absolutely help us skyrocket as we come back to London, right? Sorry, go ahead, man.
Yeah, we talked about this offline before Steve popped on, but like in times now where the opportunity pie is smaller, the agents that are willing to ramp it up and spend more and create a better experience now when it's going to be tougher are going to take over a ton of market share.
100%, man. The people that double down right now, for instance, that's why we're hiring, and we didn't hire in the crazy market, and we're hiring now. And Tom, you'll be happy to know, Tom made me start a geofarming area in January, and I just took my first listing out of it this last weekend. So, and it is like, okay, most people are like, oh man, I got to start scaling back because I don't know where costs are going to be. The guys that are going to crush it right now, your opportunity in the next 6 months to take market share is unreal. Who I feel bad for right now, unfortunately, I think is the bus bench guys paying $600 a month, but that's up to them.
We'll get into that in another episode.
There might be more people taking the bus though, so maybe they'll have more eyeballs. We'll see how it goes.
That's actually pretty good. Emma, thank you so much for coming on. Amazing first guest. I hope you don't hate Steve too much and you'll come back in the future.
I love Steve.
You like Steve now?
Yeah, I love Steve.
20 minutes in when we started grilling you, I was like, oh, come on, Steve. Not on the first guest. Like, be nice.
We're cool. I love a good open debate. I think it's more required in this environment than anything.
Emma, I'm sorry you have such a bad judge of character.
That's funny.
Emma, if people want to find you online, where do they find you?
Pace of Base on Instagram. That's kind of the main place to connect with me. And I have slowly but surely also been releasing some YouTube videos, so you can check me out there.
I've seen. Amazing. Steve, like I asked you at the end of last episode, any final words of wisdom? Anything to say?
No, I don't have any wisdom, man.
Okay.
I'm
just words.
I'm stoked that Emma's going to go down in history when we hit world real estate #1 podcast status of being our first ever guest.
All right.
Thank you guys. I feel honored, and it's been a pleasure.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Bye.
Peace out, man.